reason he might have not called for. Now this is speculation, all speculation. I must put it up. There is a good reason that he would be attending to the engine emergency or any emergency that has come up, and not elected to take the gear up. Now, if uh, I, from what I can see, if he's having a loss of thrust on both engines, it would not be a wise thing to put up that landing gear up. Having said that, this is I'm looking at this video clip, which is limited information,
Yeah.
and giving you my assessment on that.
Angad, the fact that, and I was speaking about this in the previous half hour of this conversation as well, some of the major accidents that we've had, air accidents here in India, usually involve planes going off the runway, skidding off the runway. The Kozhikode instance, the Mangalore instance, it was a tabletop runway. The plane literally fell off that tabletop runway. But this is the first instance I can think of where at the time of takeoff, and that too within a short span, within a minute of takeoff, there's a mayday call and the flight just comes crashing down. What do you think possibly went wrong?
I think it's clear that this aircraft lost thrust on both engines. Now, what specifically caused that is much more difficult to say. One point of speculation, for example, has been birds, not too dissimilar from the accident on the Hudson that we saw all those years ago. But normally when that happens, the engines will trail debris, smoke, and so on. And there's no real trail from these engines from what is admittedly a very grainy, low-resolution video. So it may not have been birds. And I think given the sort of expected actions of a pilot in such an emergency, it may well be that this engine emergency took place after decision speed, after what they call V1. Where the aircraft and the aircrew are committed to taking off regardless of what goes wrong. And it may have been anything from a mechanical fault to bird ingestion.
But couldn't he have aborted the takeoff if he did? Because, I mean, within a minute of takeoff, or within 30 seconds of takeoff, the SOS call, the mayday call was made, and the flight crashes. So what happened in those 30 seconds that he couldn't abort the takeoff?
As a general rule, once you cross decision speed, it's called decision speed because that is the point at which you decide whether you're committed to taking off or not. Once you're faster than that speed, you don't change your decision. And in this case, if they decided to take off, there was no chance that they were going to do anything differently. And frankly, at those speeds, if it had speed to rotate and get airborne, even if they had tried to set down again on the runway, what was left of the runway, I suspect, and again to echo Captain Thomas's remark, again this is pure speculation, but losing both engines at this phase of flight, it ends badly almost no matter what you do, no matter what the pilots do. It's just incredibly unfortunate.
Captain Malik is also joining us. He's a charter airline pilot. Captain Malik, from whatever you've seen of this video footage, within a minute of takeoff, in fact, within about barely 35 seconds after its nose up, it comes crashing down. Both our previous speakers saying that clearly both the engines lost thrust. I mean, both the engines malfunctioned. Otherwise, he could have survived, at least landed it in a slightly safer place, maybe in an open field, even if one engine was working. But the fact that both engines failed at the same time, which is a 1 in a million chance of such a thing happening, what do you think led to that?
See, I very much agree with by both fellows. They said it right that it's incident had happened because of the engine loss the power. Because we can see at the time of the takeoff, the aircraft gained the right power till it's reached, I think, 200 or 300 feet height from the runway. And suddenly it's just sink towards of the incident place, and we can see it that it's something from the tail attack also, because this plane had took something on the left from the left also. It was not on the straight gliding descending path. So might be we can say this is the absolutely we can say this is the loss of both of engine lost the power, and it did happen. We can assume it right now, but the rest of things it will become after the investigation what exactly had happened with the aircraft and inside the cockpit.
All right, Mr. Mirza Faizan is also an aviation expert. He apparently worked on the design and development of the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. The fact that this was an aircraft which had a stellar record, not a single known crash of the 787 Dreamliner until today, how does our understanding of what went wrong today change given these developments?
So, Zaka, yes, Boeing 787 is a stellar safety record. It's a pretty impressive bird. There's not one event which leads to an air crash. There's a series of events always which leads to a plane crash or a disaster of this scale. So there's a lot of things which we have, which is a subject of investigation. The fuel system, right? The maintenance of the fuel system. I mean, there could be a lot of reason why the engine lost power. You know, there could be a bird strike, there could be foreign object intake and on its takeoff roll. There could be fuel malfunction in the fuel system. That could also be one of the problem. So once the investigation starts, the entire maintenance log since the day one this aircraft entered into service has to be properly investigated to
What do
find
you
out.
mean by malfunctioning of the fuel system? Why would that lead to a crash? If a layman is watching this program, and I'm sure a lot of them are, why would the malfunctioning of the fuel system, what's the connection between that and the engines losing power?
All right. So in this phase of a flight, when an aircraft is needing maximum thrust, maximum power from the engine, keep in mind that the aircraft is also gulping down maximum amount of fuel. So if the fuel system, which is pumping the fuel from the fuel tanks, which is probably in the engine and its belly, to the engine, if that malfunctions, there's a very high probability that the engine may burn out. Now, since both the engine burn out at the same time, which is a very remote possibility, right? There must be some integrated cause which impacted both the engines at the same time, right? So fuel system could be one of that.
What other cause could be there?
As I said, bird strike, which happened when Captain Seri landed his plane in the Hudson in 2009. I just seen for the first time, I've seen the video of this this aircraft crashing from the time it took off on your channel.
Yeah, let's play that video again, yeah.
Yeah.
As you're speaking, yeah.
So I do not see that there is a possibility of a bird hit. Reason being, when the bird is sucked into the engine of an aircraft, the engine is deprived of right amount of oxygen, and it starts to sputter. It starts to give short blast, black smoke from its exhaust, which I cannot see in this situation. So bird hit is definitely not something I will speculate on at this point of time, right? Fuel system might look one. Sometime it might happen. Now this video is from a different angle. Sometime when the pitch is too much, the aircraft is deprived of fuel as well. But I do not see that the pitch is also very abnormal at this point of time. So the malfunction of the fuel system is one thing. I will put my
Captain Thomas was referring to this. I think in the 3 instances that you recounted where both engines malfunctioned at the same time, I think you said one of them, obviously the Sully example, was the bird hit, the famous one where he flew into the Hudson River. But the second example you cited, Captain Thomas, was of contaminated fuel system.
That's correct. That happened with British Airways, if I'm not mistaken. It was a 777 airplane. And there is a phenomenon called cold soaking that happens, and that somehow will affect the fuel system. And now again, the caveat at all times about the speculative part. Even I do not believe that this airplane has suffered a bird hit. Secondly, the engines of these airplanes are not the same as the one that Captain Sully faced during that the Hudson issue. And secondly, we've operated out of Ahmedabad several times, and the birds that come not during the migratory season, but at the normal times like it is now, are not sufficiently big enough to cause any major damage to a 787 engine, and let alone both of those engines. So
No,
I
and
would
also
say-
I would imagine it can't be just one bird. It has to be a flock of birds. And from whatever we've seen this visual, we've zoomed in and stuff. We can't see any flock of birds around the time of takeoff. Again, admittedly, this is CCTV footage. It's being recorded from somewhere inside the airport compound itself. It's a little grainy. It's not necessarily a high resolution image or high resolution video, but it doesn't seem like nowhere in this video can I see any kind of flock of birds.
And when you hit birds, there is a telltale sign from the engine if it has had this catastrophic kind of failure. And the fact that he is given a mayday call, there has been a significant failure. And there have been questions of why there was no communication after that. You must understand that this is VHF communication. Once the aircraft loses altitude, it would be difficult because it's a line of sight communication, and it would be difficult for the air traffic control to get in touch with the airplane or vice versa.
So, Angad, if indeed there was some kind of fuel system issue, and this was the same flight which went from Delhi to Ahmedabad, and then the next leg of the flight was Ahmedabad-London, how come they didn't detect this, or these red flags were not raised in the previous leg of this flight?
I mean, again, with the caveat that this is entirely speculation, these issues, they don't manifest immediately. They don't manifest all of a sudden. They take time to show up. I mean, if, for example, if it's debris blocking a filter or damaging a fuel pump, it doesn't catastrophically seize right away. In fact, it could take precisely that amount of time, a Delhi to Ahmedabad flight, for the fuel system contamination to sort of take hold. And then I think one of my panelists already mentioned this. Takeoff is the regime in which the engines are sucking down the most amount of fuel, and so for that small issue in the fuel system, whether it's a filter or a pump or whatever, takeoff is actually the likeliest time that it would manifest itself. But again, I mean, at this point, it's losing the fuel system on two engines on a modern aircraft, which are designed to be redundant, is highly unusual. I have to admit, I'm not intimately familiar with the 787's fuel system, so I don't know if there are any single points of failure. But yeah, losing systems, safety critical systems, in today's age of certification would be very unusual.
And also, I would imagine, while this aircraft was being turned around after it landed, after it completed the first leg, and while it was being turned around, there would have been requisite maintenance, and the engineers would have checked it. Again, this was not picked up while it was on ground in Ahmedabad before it was turned around for the London leg.
Unless a specific issue is reported, turnaround servicing, turnaround maintenance is not that intensive. I mean, it's not. You wouldn't go into the fuel system, for example, on a turnaround. Unless the aircrew on the incoming flight specifically flagged an issue for maintenance, I don't think the fuel system would be looked at to that extent.
If Mr. Faizan is there, and I can go back to him, all right, we'll go back to him in a moment. Captain Malik, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, if this was not a bird hit, and again, I'm just from whatever I can see on the footage, I'm not an expert. I don't visibly see any flock of birds, when this flight is taking off. If it's a fuel system issue, again, the question that is top of mind is how come the previous leg of this flight did not detect that? Again, how come the ground engineers who would have serviced this and maintained this to turn it around for the next leg, and it's a long leg. I mean, surely there would have been some degree of refueling there as well, because you would need much more fuel for an 8-hour, 9-hour flight to London as opposed to a 2-hour flight between Delhi and Ahmedabad. How come no one picked this issue? Because it's happened within seconds of takeoff. So the issue, whatever it may have been, did not develop in that 30 seconds while it was on the runway and taking off.
Yeah. See, I'm not agree with Mr. Faizan's what he question he raised about the fuel system, because the aircraft is not it was its first flight from the Ahmedabad. It came from Delhi to Ahmedabad. It had happened, and it somewhere is the problem with the fuel system. It may be happen in the way from Delhi to Ahmedabad. It could maybe happen in the mid-air also. And I'm telling you very clearly that the fuel system of the 787, it's a four calibration fuel supplying system inside this aircraft, which is one is not working, then other is automatically start working. So it is not this possibility is not possible. Okay, there is a fault with the fuel system. First of all, clear. Secondly, my fellow is he's right that there is no but we could not see in the video also that it's not a migratory system also. Even it's in very low flying right now. If it is on the 1,000 feet or maybe 800 feet or 700 feet, then we can say some bird may be hit to this engine. But in the very early after the takeoff of the aircraft, suddenly aircraft lose the power. So we can say somewhere in the local weather around the runway might suddenly sudden change in the weather, and the losing of this both of engine, it might had happened
Okay.
in my observation.
Mr. Faizan, I'll give you the last word, a minute. Again, the hypothesis that you put forth, again, all of us are speculating here. But the idea that it would have been some kind of fuel contamination, a fuel system contamination, how come it didn't get picked up in the previous leg of the flight from Delhi to Ahmedabad?
So it does not work like that. If there is an issue in a system, it could have been picked up in the previous flight, and going with that hypothesis, every plane has to crash if there's an issue in its first flight, right? It does not work like that. How it works is like every flight, every takeoff, every landing add to stress, and then that stress on the system accumulates, and it results in a chain reaction, which keeps on impacting some other systems. This leads to crash. There have been instances where maintenance done 6 years ago led to a plane crash after 6 years, right? So there are incidents like that. But I agree with all of you here that we are all speculating. We don't know what has happened.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Like I said, our thoughts and prayers with the families of the victims who died. There's been just one miraculous survivor that we know of. All the others on board are feared dead. Thank you very much for tuning into this coverage. But on the other side, my colleague Rahul will take this forward.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
I can assure you that Indian aviation is probably one of the safest in the world. We have all the protocols in place. Our DGCA is very robust and effective, and to find, to pick holes into our ability to manage Indian aviation would be very unfair. And I always say this, and I repeat, that aviation is either 100% or zero. There's nothing like 99.9% in aviation. And therefore, in this case also, look at the aircraft. It arrived from Ahmedabad from Delhi. Obviously, it flew without any issue. And to take a 9.5-hour journey from Ahmedabad to London, obviously the pilots would have done all the pre-flight checks. And no pilot is foolish enough to take off if he is not satisfied. The captain per se in this aircraft would have also had thousands and thousands of hours of command. And a 787 and today's aircraft per se are very robust, fail-safe. They have many backup systems. And to really think what went wrong, I would be hazarding a guess, which would not be fair. But the point here is the aircraft did go on a takeoff roll, and between the time the wheels went up and the time it crashed, probably the time frame would have been almost only about 60 seconds or so, because you
Yes.
can't go to 800 feet and crash and it be within less. I mean, the time span is only 60 seconds. Now he's already given a mayday call. Now I don't know what exactly went wrong. It will be again hazarding a guess, which would be unfair. The only thing which can be ascertained is now, since the aircraft has fallen just a few hundred meters from the airport and in the BJ Medical Complex, therefore, to retrieve the black box and the other equipment would be also, quite simple. We would be able to ascertain only after that. Let me tell you one more thing. In today's aircraft, they are very sophisticated. All the parameters of an aircraft, right? Every single second the aircraft is in the air, all the parameters are recorded, not only by the aircraft, but they are also transmitted to a central command, real time, of the airline itself. So if there is, when an aircraft does a flight, there is a way to ascertain every single parameter during whatever the duration of the flight. So if anything would have gone wrong prior to this flight, or which may have escaped the attention of anybody, I'm sure this will be retrieved in no time once the equipment is found.
Now, Mr. Patel, just to go back in time, because this fleet, the Dreamliner, very, very safe. I think from what the experts are saying, and I only have them to sort of lean on for facts, they've said that this is the first time a Dreamliner has actually crashed anywhere in the world. Now, most of these Dreamliners were purchased, I suppose, about 10, 12, 15 years back by Air India when it was still government owned. Obviously, there would have been a huge procedure that must have unfurled within government to select the plane. There would have been due diligence. There would have been all sorts of studies that would have been conducted.
Well, most certainly. I mean, first, the procedure itself in government is a very robust procedure. Goes through several layers. And ultimately, the basic selection of aircraft is done only on technical parameters. Because, the airline, requires a certain type of aircraft for certain, lengths of the flights. You want to go to the US, you want to go to the European countries, or to, 8-hour flights, 12-hour flights, and so on. And the kind of configuration you want. Let me also tell you that the Dreamliner, at the time it was ordered, was one of the most sophisticated, advanced fly-by-wire aircraft which was going to be produced. And it was ordered by...
Viewers, the footage makes the heart sink. In 30 seconds, it was all over. You can see those pictures, all over for 242 passengers on AI-171, barring one miracle survivor, as the plane crashed into a medical college located in its flight path just beyond the perimeter of the Ahmedabad airport, viewers. One of the biggest tragedies in the country. The plane lost lift catastrophically. Its landing gear hadn't even been retracted, and you can see that, viewers. It was laden with fuel as it was preparing for a long haul to London Gatwick. It was a firebomb, virtually, waiting to go off. It was just a 13-year-old aircraft, so ordinarily it shouldn't have suffered the catastrophic failures it has. The only silver lining, as I told you, was the news of a survivor emerging from the wreckage. Literally a walking miracle. There you can see him. The survivor was a man, or is a man called Vishwas Kumar Ramesh, a British national who was returning to London. He was seated on 11A. He recounted that he was surrounded by fire and smoke and can't believe he is alive. Judging by the ball of flames, even we can't believe that someone survived this inferno. You can see those pictures. I want to go back to those pictures. There are two visuals of that crash. One, of course, is this entire sequence from takeoff to crash. which makes the heart sink and the stomach churn. And there is another one, caught from a distance, from a different angle. There it is, viewers. Mid-flight, and the plane comes down. Now, Vishwanath Ramesh, as I told you, is lucky to be alive. He's lucky to be alive. And viewers, I have to say that if it's a silver lining, news of a survivor emerging from the wreckage, then I have to say, viewers, that the others shouldn't actually have died. Let me tell you, this tragedy could have been averted. Red flags have been raised, not once, but repeatedly. And in my hand, viewers, are the instances. The DGCA that comes under the central government has flagged numerous issues with Air India through show cause notices, but never got adequately satisfactory responses. That is what the DGCA has said on numerous occasions. If this is the case, why did the DGCA give such a long rope to Air India? These are questions the DGCA must answer. The Tata Group, the DGCA needs to come out and explain. At one point, for example, the DGCA said and flagged, quote, instances of unauthorized entry into the aircraft cockpit have been reported to the DGCA in the recent past, wherein persons having no authority or purpose were permitted entry into cockpit, unquote. This is a serious breach. But more than this, there were show cause notices for risky flight safety. Viewers, there are many instances, and these instances begin from June 2022, when Tata took over Air India. Now, viewers, the Tata Group came with a halo. It emphasized the fact that Tata was the one that was taking over Air India. Why? Because there's a certain brand resonance. There's a certain trust factor associated with the Tata brand. Viewers, did the Tatas squander that trust? Did they barter it for profitability? I don't know. I can only tell you the instances when it appears that it has been quite lax on the issue of safety. On January 2025, it was fined 30 lakhs for allowing a pilot to fly without completing mandatory takeoffs and landings. How could you do that, viewers? The Tata brand stands for something. How could they cut a corner such as this? The DGCA once said, quote, instances of unauthorized entry into aircraft cockpit have been reported to DGCA in the recent past, wherein persons having no authority or purpose were permitted entry into the cockpit. Air India pilots raise alarms over extended duty hours, with unions, ICPA and IPG alleging safety compromises and regulatory violations. All of this has happened. They seek immediate action to halt the coercion for extended flight duty time limitations, FTTL that is, and uphold aviation safety standards. The point is that to make Air India profitable, we're being told corners were being cut regularly. Maintenance crews were cut back. I'm not saying that these issues are directly linked to what happened tonight or earlier today, but I'm saying that there were problems in the manner in which Air India has been running its business, potentially taking its duties casually. And that's the problem. Trust is of utmost importance in this business. Did the Tata Group barter that for profitability? That's a question I'm going to be repeatedly asking. And, viewers, if this was the track record, if the DGCA itself was not satisfied as it maintains on its own, and let me read out something to you, viewers, from another part of this report that I have. It said, in May 2024, the DGCA issued a show cause notice after 2 long-haul flights left passengers in stifling cabins without proper air conditioning. The notice stated the airline was time and again failing to take due care of its passengers, unquote. It is just a mentality. And the DGCA, if it found that the airline was so constantly in breach of its own standards, why didn't it do something about it? There's also something else. A whistleblower had urged the maker of the Air India Dreamline plane, Boeing, to ground the fleet. Boeing engineer Salehpur urged maker to ground every 787 Dreamliner, flagging risk of premature failure. Salehpur claimed manufacturing giant took shortcuts to reduce production bottlenecks while making the 787. He also came out with a complaint that read, gaps in separately manufactured fuselage sections faulty, reduces durability, raises the risk of a catastrophic failure. I'm not saying that happened earlier today, but between 21 and 2023, the Federal Aviation Administration of America and Boeing paused deliveries of the new Dreamliners to investigate the issue. Boeing later stated it had updated its manufacturing process and deliveries eventually resumed. Did Air India do its due diligence with Boeing? How did it satisfy itself that Boeing has taken care of the problem? What was the nature of this due diligence? Because in just this year, there have been 6 incidents involving the 787. This is the 6th aircraft incident in 2025 involving a Boeing 787 Dreamliner. Washington-bound Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner made an emergency landing in Lagos after declaring a mid-air emergency. September 2024, an Air India Boeing 787-800 passenger plane en route from Delhi to Birmingham made a precautionary landing in Moscow due to technical issues. There was another problem between an Air India plane, Dreamliner, Delhi to SF, made a precautionary landing in Siberia. Why? Because the crew detected a potential issue in the cargo hold. May 2024, Boeing warned airlines flying its 787 Dreamliner model to inspect certain switches in the cockpit after a New Zealand-bound LATAM plane dropped violently mid-flight, injuring several passengers. You might even remember that incident. There's also the Turkish angle, viewers. Air India had signed an agreement with Turkish Technic for the maintenance of its wide-body aircraft. After Operation Sindoor, this was reviewed, or the contract is under review. I don't know the exact status. I'm not saying at all, viewers, that it did this so deliberately. But viewers, there are a lot of questions that need to be answered, specifically aimed at arriving at a conclusion. Could this have been prevented? With greater care from both the DGCA and Tata. Today, the Tata Group has expressed regret. But is it nearly enough, viewers? Noel Tata, chairman of Tata Trust, said he's deeply saddened by the tragic accident involving Air India Flight 171. Heart-wrenching incident has brought immense grief to countless families. Our thoughts are with all those who have lost their loved ones, and our heartfelt condolences to bereaved families, and stand in solidarity with them during this unimaginable time, unquote. What won't go unnoticed is that the crash has taken place within days of Boeing settling a case with US Department of Justice. 2 major crashes that were due to faults on Boeing new 737 MAX model. Nothing to do with this aircraft, viewers. In Indonesia and Ethiopia in 2018 and 2019, those are the 2 cases. Last month, Boeing paid off $1.1 billion in a deal with the US Department of Justice to avoid prosecution over the 2 crashes. Lawyers for some of the victim families call the payoff deal morally repugnant. Now, viewers, some questions need to be asked. We can't simply put this down to misfortune. We can't simply put this down to an awful constellation of consequences. No, viewers. We still don't have the report, but far too many lives have been lost on the ground and in the aircraft. And I want to open this up. We have with us M.R. Sivaraman, former DGCA, KVG Rao, former cabin crew, Air India, Captain Amit Singh, founder of Safety Matters Foundation, Devesh Agarwal, aviation expert, Parvez Damania. All of these people are very well known. Suhail Seth will also be there with us in just a few moments. But I want to first begin asking some very straightforward questions. And I want to begin with former DGCA, KVG Rao, former cabin crew, Air India also. Now, Captain Amit Singh, are you there with us? Okay, why is he not there? Let's get him on because it's important. Mr. Sivaraman, former DGCA. What do you make of the incident today? What do you make of it?
It is very difficult to come to any conclusion right now or even make a guess. Normally, when an aircraft is cleared for takeoff, it is cleared with respect to all its parameters, without which no pilot of the experience of this gentleman who took command of the aircraft would have accepted to fly the aircraft. And moreover, this aircraft has been flying for the past 11 to 12 years. And all its defects, deficiencies, everything might have been noted, and they would be on record for the DGCA to investigate them properly. Of course, now it's too late to take any remedial action in respect to the aircraft, but of course, it would be visible in regard to the action taken if there had been any deficiency reported by the pilot. In this particular case, the aircraft took off properly. That means the aircraft had developed full thrust on both its engines. But as it reached a height of 600 feet above the airport level, suddenly it had lost lift and the aircraft simply fell. One can see it very clearly that it was floating and it just fell. That means it lost all its lift, which could happen only on, as far as I know, only in two cases. One, both the engines have failed, or the entire lift mechanism of the aircraft, the stabilizer, the ailerons, everything failed. Now that cannot happen unless there has been a catastrophic negligence in regard to the
Catastrophical, you say, catastrophical negligence, but it could have been a catastrophic failure, and this has been flagged by a former Boeing engineer, Mr. Salehpur. You know this case. We all know this case. It was flagged last year.
Yeah, I know.
He warned. He said, ground these flights, ground these planes. Yet we were told by Boeing that everything has been sorted out.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, sir, but there is somebody who needs to put their hands up and tell us on what basis did they believe that Boeing had rectified the issue. We don't know. Maybe this is exactly the foreboding this gentleman had.
That's correct.
Yes. Lives have been lost.
What I'm trying to
we
say
owe them an explanation.
That the Boeing aircraft is such a giant corporation having influence all over the world, including the governments to which they supply aircraft or to the countries which they supply aircraft, and they get away with paying fines. In fact, they should have been prosecuted, and they were not prosecuted. The Boeing chief was not prosecuted. They got away with fines.
Yeah, they paid blood money to the Department of Justice, the US Department of Justice. They paid $1.1 billion. They paid blood money. I mean, hundreds of people died in those crashes in 2018 and 2019 when a 737 MAX model in Indonesia and Ethiopia crashed, just because they were lives that perhaps in the rarefied environs were not European lives or US lives or whatever it is. It didn't matter. You could just pay money, insulate yourself from the blowback, from the law.
And get away with it.
Shocking.
See, in my time when I was DGCA, one Boeing 747 aircraft lost one engine, a whole engine fell near Palam airport and the aircraft crash landed, and it was burning when I reached the aircraft at that particular point of time. When we reported this matter, we found, due to our investigations, we found the bolt which held the engines, they were very weak. Ultimately, the Boeing rectified it and they got away with it. These are giant companies. What can we do? At the most, we can say, okay, we will not buy any more Boeing aircraft. That is one decision the country can take. The government can take, the airlines can take. Secondly, the point that you have mentioned in your introduction, that several notices were given to the Tata Airlines, and they are not compliant with the DGCA's instructions. That's a very sorry state of affairs. I am afraid if I had been DGCA, I would have given them notice so that I would withdraw their license to fly. That should have been the step taken by the DGCA. If so many of their notices had not been complied with the company,
there's a problem here. Parvez Damania, there is a problem here. You know, you've been part of the airline industry for a very long time. I am shocked. Parvez Damania, you've been you've been executive director of Kingfisher Airlines. I'm shocked that the DGCA has complained on numerous occasions, fined Air India. I'm talking about a culture here of laxity.
DGCA is a very firm body. They're very strict. I know Shivaraman sir very well. and they would take action against any airline that would not fall in line. I am surprised that they've given so much leverage to Air India and Tata, which is quite surprising to me. And this is a very hard lesson, a very bitter pill to swallow. These people have died, so many lives have been lost, and no amount of money can compensate the situation. As far as Boeing, you are talking now, the problem for the world is there are only two manufacturers left, Boeing and Airbus. So you have to choose between the two. Today, any airline in the world cannot ignore Boeing completely. There has to be some amount of competition, there's some amount of strategy. So airlines are forced to buy Boeing or Airbus. So a lot of people end up buying Boeing, and that is the reality of the situation there is. Now, I heard what you said, but I am very shocked to understand that the Tata Group, with such high moral standards, are behaving in this manner. This cannot be excused, and this is a very, very, very expensive wake-up call.
So, in the interest of balance, let's not jump to conclusions. Let me pull myself back, viewers, because it's easy today to go on a witch hunt without the facts, without the absolute facts. We only have conjectures. We only have past precedent. Has that resulted in the incident that we are seeing today? One survivor miraculously has escaped this absolute ball of fire.
I'm switching over to the other line.
Okay, just 1 second. Stay on with me. I just want to bring in Mr. Devesh Agarwal. He's an aviation expert also. Mr. Agarwal, look, what could have resulted in what we just remove these pictures of Mr. Shah and put this thing of the pictures of the plane. Yes, let's have a look at that. That's important, viewers. This is very, very important. What we're seeing is a takeoff, and within 30 seconds or so, the plane is down. Mr. Agarwal, what do you make of this? What could have happened? What could have happened to this plane? I think you're on mute, sir. Yeah, please unmute yourself. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. I can't still hear you. You're on mute. I don't know what happened between the afternoon and today, because we were hearing you very clearly and you made so much sense. He's still on mute. I don't know. Okay, let's try to come back to you, but let me bring in Wing Commander Sudhakaran. Wing Commander Sudhakaran, you've been a pilot. What do you make of this? What do you think has happened? Some people are saying that the flaps of the airliner weren't opened to a particular degree, etc., etc. Everyone's become an expert. What do you think is happening?
To begin with, I'm not a pilot.
My mistake, sir.
I'm a nautical engineer. So I'm qualified on avionics, not a pilot. But having said that, having served in the Air Force and having been around the aircrafts and seen enough accidents, see, any accident, the primary cause is generally assessed through what is called as the Swiss cheese model. And that has been brought out by many experts. It's not one reason which leads to an aircraft accident. It never happens. It is a layer of cheese which gets aligned, and all these holes, when it gets aligned, that's when that perfect accident happens. And unfortunately, today was one of the day, and my heart goes out to people who lost their lives. I stand with the families today. But you know, if you try and assess, there is one thing that is very clear here. There is something that is catastrophically failed.
Okay, something catastrophically wrong. Okay, let me bring in now Devesh Agarwal, if I can hear him. Devesh Agarwal, what do you make of this?
Okay, Rahul, if you see the video with the audio on, you can hear engine sounds. So, you know, the thoughts of people saying that there's a sudden loss of power. Actually, there seems to be a sudden loss of lift. Now, that could happen for a variety of reasons, including an engine failing. But the thing is, these GE engines, the Gen X engines, are, you know, from a family of GE engines that are over 30 years old, and they have got a solid reputation. In fact, you were mentioning the flight which was from Delhi to San Francisco, which had to divert to Russia. It was a 777, and all 777s are powered by GE 90 engines. And these are the engines that have proven so reliable that earlier, when aircraft used to fly, they had to be within 60 minutes of an airport for diversion. Today, that time frame has shifted to 6 hours, which permits these flights of Air India over deep parts of Russia where there is no airport nearby, purely based on the reliability of that engine. Now, and just a small piece of information, any aircraft has to certify, it has to prove that it can take off at its maximum takeoff weight, full of fuel, full of equivalent of passengers, the maximum specified takeoff weight of the aircraft as specified by the manufacturer. It has to prove that it can take off with one engine failed. If you go to YouTube and just see, Airbus has to do it, Boeing has to do it, Embraer has to do it, Comac has to do it. We talk about Russia, MC-21. There are now 5 different manufacturers. All of them have to prove that their aircraft can fly with one engine, or rather take off with full weight with one engine. So here, it exactly as one of our panelists from the Air Force saying, it's a Swiss cheese model. No accident is a result of a single cause. It is always a series of slices of cheese where the holes line up, and mistake after mistake after mistake. Now, that mistake could be human, it could be weather, it could be technical, it could be mechanical. This particular
clearly,
aircraft,
what do you mean weather? Because it's a clear day, visibility is great.
Well,
there are no surface winds.
No, that's the thing. You could have. I don't see that as much of a possibility, but you can see the aircraft is taking off at an angle. What is the crosswind element there? Was there a microburst, which is called wind shear? These are things that will come out, and which is why I urge people, please let us not speculate. Let us wait for some kind of preliminary report. I'm very, very sure that the accident investigators from India's AAIB, because they will be assisted by the US NTSB, by Boeing, by GE, by Air India, by AAI. There will be a big investigation team, and it will come out. So we just have to hold on for a little while, and let's avoid speculation, because honestly, I feel we do disservice.
No, but we're also looking at a pathology here. We have to look
sir.
at the pathology. Look, yes, of course we have to wait. No one is foolish enough to think that the pilot would want to fly an aircraft that is compromised in any which way. No one is suggesting for a moment that Tata willingly has put passengers in jeopardy by flying this aircraft because it knew something but decided not to act upon it. I'm not getting there. I'm not talking about that kind of culpability, but I'm talking about a laxity, a lax approach towards passenger and air travel, passenger safety and air travel, and there has been enough of a history. And the DGCA, look, I don't know about the DGCA, but the little experience I've had covering news for a while now, I have noticed that the DGCA, some people here say they take a lot of action, etc., but I've also seen when certain things have been permitted, which should not have been permitted. We've seen this in the past.
Rahul, if I may, Air India, at least see, the aircraft may not have been maintained internally, kept clean, things were breaking, things like that. I can understand that. But Air India engineering, they have a very strong reputation.
Okay, look, I mean,
let me just 5 seconds, 5 seconds. They have a reputation of sending out airworthy aircraft. You see, Air India flights are not this thing. You talk about diversions and all. Hey, that happens so regularly.
Okay. Let me bring in KVG Rao. He's been a part of Air India before. Mr. Rao, tell me, Air India is above blame because their brand, their values are unimpeachable. That's the sense I'm getting on this panel. Would you agree with that?
Firstly, Rahul, my heart goes out to the people whose lives are lost. Having said that, Air India always had a very bad track record of flight safety. I have been flagging the flight safety violations since the year 2008. And there are innumerable, like I can tell you around lakhs of flights have flown illegally and contrary to rules. I'm not getting into that now. Air India got privatized under the Tatas. After the Tatas, also the culture didn't change in Air India. Profit took over the thing. I'll give you a simple example, Rahul. This is a DGCA report in July 2023. They conducted a surprise raid on the Air India, and they found that the checklists were physically signed by an auditor from CMS department, which does not fall under the approval and inspection scope of DGCA. But till today, nothing has happened to that officer. She has got promotions. She has risen from GM to director and finds her way always into the flight safety department. The DGCA has been the most lackadaisical organization that I have seen from 2008. I have filed numerous writ petitions in the Bombay High Court and the Delhi High Court. Unfortunately, the courts, there are delay in the courts, it's happening. I have documented at least 1 lakh violations from 2018 to 2014. Now we come to know that in 2017, when we filed a writ petition before the Delhi High Court, that DGCA did not have the powers to make those rules also. So DGCA was actually fudging reports. And our worst sector was the India-Australia operations. Flights were operated despite a report given saying that if you operate in the manner that you are operating, the flight safety risk is 25 times the permissible limit. And it is their own report. It is not my report. But the DGCA has been sleeping over it.
Why? Why do you think?
There is a quid pro quo. If you want me to be very honest with you, it's a quid pro quo. It's as simple as that. I have not won. Here I have DGCA saying that medical reports are forged.
Can you go through some of these documents, sir? Tell us a little bit about this. I'm completely shocked right now.
Provision of QR code on the test reports for medical examination. It is noticed by the medical DTO, DGCA, DSCA headquarters that of the reports submitted by license holders to undergo medical examination are being amended, not amended, EMEN. That means they have been forged to normal values and submitted. What action has been taken against those people? Nothing. The flight safety director gets away with blue murder. Here, this is another thing. DGCA report. Wrong crew on a flight. And they flew halfway to realize that the person on the left hand side was not competent to be on that aircraft in the first place.
Oh my God.
No action. No action taken.
And which airline is this? Which airline is
Air
this?
India. I am only talking about Air India.
When, sir? When? What period? What time period?
23rd August 2024.
So this is after Tata's took over?
Yes, 23rd December 2023. Okay. July 2023. Rahul, I will not make a statement without having documents. I have approached the Civil Aviation Minister n number of times. His ears have been filled by people who have committed these frauds.
Which Civil Aviation Minister? You talking about Mr. Naidu, the Union Civil
The
Aviation
present one also, I just sent a mail to him, and the earlier ones also. In fact, for violations, I have also obtained court orders to file FIRs. They have taken it to the High Court, fraudulently obtained interim reliefs. We are fighting it. I have been fighting this battle, Rahul, since 2008 on the flight safety violations. After the arrival of the 787s, all the rules were tweaked. Each and every rule on the India-Australia operations where Air India started their 787 flights were tweaked. Contrary to what Mr. Naseem Zaidi, who was then the DGCA, was very particular. That no, this is how you will operate these long-range flights which are over 14 hours of flight time. It is their own DGCA officers who have violated those rules. We have brought it to their notice, but nothing happens. Because like I said, there is political compulsions, there is maybe gratuities involved. And I make this statement with full responsibility, Rahul. I have seen it day in and day out. I have been a victim of exposing these corruptions.
So tell me something, sir. You said that you've approached the courts. You're not getting a hearing from the executive or from the DGCA or from the airlines, what have you, but you approached the courts. And what is the court done? The court in this country that is constantly, viewers, unveiling itself in activism. Now let's listen to what the courts have done in this country. Mr. Rao, tell us.
I filed 2 writ petitions in the year 2013 and 2014. Till 2019, neither did Air India nor did DGCA file a reply to those writ petitions. And 2019, the present Chief Justice of India, Justice Gawai, had to pass an order saying it is unfortunate that for 5 years you have not filed a reply on the violations that took place from 2013 to 2019.
My gosh.
I have filed criminal cases on these people because they have endangered lives. The court, and I'm sorry, the courts also have let me down badly. So
we're not surprised. I'm sorry, I'm not surprised.
I'm telling you, Rahul, these are all criminal cases filed by me in the criminal courts. I have at least 63 criminal cases.
So are you saying, so Mr. Rao, let's just cut to the brass tacks. Are you saying that this kind of an incident could have been averted had there been greater honest vigilance? Is that what you're saying?
No,
let me give you an example. For example, let me give you an example. On March 2025, DGCA show causes Air India 80 lakh fine for breaching pilot flight duty time limits. It's a very sensitive issue, viewers. Then, January 2024, 2 months prior, 30 lakh fine for inadequate Cat 3 pilot rostering during fog. So the person who was flying that plane did not have the adequate training, the skill set to fly in fog. Viewers, and that person would have been carrying anywhere between 150 to about 170 passengers. So you're risking knowingly the lives.
Lakhs of lives that have been endangered till today. And I have documents to prove it, Rahul. I don't speak without documents. I am before a court on affidavit.
No, I'm talking about DGCA action on Air India. So just a fine, 30 lakhs here, 20 lakhs there, is that the price of 180 lives?
Yeah.
I'm shocked.
What is 30 lakhs? The company is paying it.
Exactly.
It is the shareholders' money. It doesn't come from the pocket of the pilot. It doesn't burn a hole in his pocket.
I mean, there is a 30 lakh fine, sir. So DGCA has taken action in January 2025. 30 lakh fine for allowing a pilot to fly without completing mandatory takeoffs and landings. I mean, this is double jeopardy.
Has he not endangered lives?
That's what I'm saying. And the cost is 30 lakhs.
Yes.
So where is the disincentive, viewers? Why aren't these people hauled before criminal courts, etc., etc.? Why is the DGCA not moving?
I am fighting against the wall. I mean, I stick out like a sore thumb because I'm a whistleblower. My family is being hurt. I mean, I know what I'm going through, what I'm doing.
So let me just hold on, sir. This is very, very. First of all, we salute you for your yeoman service. Unfortunately, viewers, look at this. One single man waging a fight against a system that is actually trying to discredit this person. And he's got all his documents, he's got all the reports, he's only highlighting what the DGCA itself has observed. I mean, how bizarre is this, viewers? That a 30 lakh fine, a 30 lakh fine, or an 80 lakh fine, or another 30 lakh fine for endangering, knowing fully well that your pilot is not up to the task. So endangering 150, 140, 130 lives. I don't know what kind of craft this was, whether this was just an Airbus 320 or whether it was a bigger craft, I don't know, the capacity. But anywhere between 130 lives upwards. And the price is 30 lakhs. Do the math, viewers. Do the math. Today, Air India has announced compensation of 1 crore for each of the passengers who lost their lives. 1 crore, viewers. I want to bring in Suhail Seth. Sir, just stay on with me because I want you to respond also to some of these responses that we're going to get. Suhail Seth, thank you very much for joining us. We have with us others on the panel who are extremely well versed in this there's Mr. Damania, who you must know. I want to begin by asking you, there's growing evidence to suggest that Air India hasn't taken its responsibilities very seriously. And therefore, can the Tatas just walk away from all of this thinking that they're blameless, Mr. Seth?
I don't think the Tatas are the kind of group that will walk away from any responsibility. Rahul, you were there when 2611 happened. Ratan Tata, R.K. Krishna Kumar at that point in time stood right outside the Taj. Mr. Tata attended every funeral. We gave help to everyone. The Tatas gave help to everyone. They offered help, both financial and emotional. I don't think the Tatas as a group is the kind that will walk away from anything. A. B. You've seen N. Chandrasekharan's statement. The statement very clearly says that we will get to the bottom of this. We will offer all the support, all the help to all the families that have been affected by this crash. Look, no one, and least of all a group as venerable as the Tatas, would want anything of this kind to happen. So, while everyone says, oh, the DGCA has flagged this, the DGCA has flagged that, then my question, Rahul, to you as an ordinary Indian citizen is, then why did the DGCA not take action? Everyone says, oh, but the DGCA wrote to the Tatas, DGCA wrote to this. Please remember that Tatas have more to lose should there be a problem, and as there has been of this magnitude reputationally, than the DGCA. A. B. This is a group that took on Air India when no one wanted to touch it, made changes. You had visible changes in both the consumer experience and the refurbed aircraft. So, someone needs to cut the Tatas some slack. It's very easy in our country to hold one person responsible and say, oh, the Tatas are at fault. The aviation business, and Rahul, I was on the global board of British Airways, on the global advisory board. I know a thing or two about how airlines are run. It's very easy to say, oh, but British Airways was at fault or Air India is at fault. The reality is the following. A, we have to wait for an inquiry. B, we have to get down with the people from Boeing, because this is a Boeing issue more than an Air India or a DGCA issue. Number 3, where did the Tatas go wrong? You had a pilot, the commander of the aircraft had more than 8,000 hours of flying. The first officer had more than 1,100 hours of flying. Do you think people would risk a non-maintained aircraft, and would they even fly it? Number 2, the pilots of Air India are rated amongst the finest by any aviation research that you can undertake in the world. So I'm saying that it is early days, it's early hours.
Okay, you're saying let the dust settle a little bit. Mr. Rao, how do you respond to this? The Air India under Tatas is very conscious of its brand image. It's not going to do things that is going to jeopardize the legacy of the Tatas. And we know that that legacy is quite a shining legacy. How do you respond to that?
Let me assure Mr. Suhail Seth, I am second generation Air Indian. My father was very close to Mr. G.R.D. Tata. And they broke no violation. Let me make that also very clear. So I know exactly where the Tatas are coming from. But it is a culture that has gone down now. I'm not blaming the Tatas. We can't say Mr. Ratan Tata or G.R.D. Tata. The company is run by a bunch of corporate executives. They are only worried about their promotions, their bonuses, and other things. At no stage have I said that the Tatas are bad. Let me make that also very, very clear. I have had issues and I have taken up those issues. It is unfortunate that Tatas have brought in lawyers to kind of fight these illegalities that we are exposing.
No, Rahul,
that is the saddest part.
1 second. Rahul. Let him finish. Okay. Go ahead.
Like I said, I have the documents.
Okay.
It's not.
So Mr. Damania wants to respond to you.
Rahul,
Yes.
Any company will try and protect the reputation. If somebody files a case, Tatas are bound to bring in the lawyers. How are they supposed to not protect the reputation? See, I am 100% sure that Tatas would not cut any cost as far as the engineering standards are concerned. It's a cash-rich company. It's not a company that's going down or some company running tight for money.
No, I'm not implying. No, hang on. I'm not. Let's be very clear here. I'm talking about owners.
You want to ruin their reputation.
No, that's true. But we also know that this is not a charity, right? You have to make profits. There are people who've come out from within Tata Group, within Indian Airlines. Sorry. No, 1 second. There are people who've come
desperate to make profit that they will take risks.
Okay, let's
I'm
not be
100%
so
sure of that.
Okay, but
And
then
another thing, I'll tell you
hang on.
what,
The next question.
We are jumping the gun.
No, I'm not
Till
jumping the gun.
black box is found,
I'm
till the
only
cockpit
interested.
voice recorder is found. We are just guessing.
No, that's fine. But I'm
Even
interested in, look, this may not have anything to do with any of these pathologies that I'm referring to here. None of this backstory might have actually led to what has happened, and I respect that point of view, sir. I completely, Mr. Damania, respect that point of view. But if you are to prevent the larger rot from infecting other services on other days, we also have to, on a day such as this, look at that issue. And if there are issues, they need to be addressed. We have to minimize risk, don't we?
At every stage, safety comes first in aviation.
There we go. So I am looking at a track record that doesn't inspire much confidence. I don't know if this is about making money, saving, the extra rupee here or 10 rupees there to boost profitability. I don't know. I'm not going into all of that. But what I'm seeing is a kind of laxity. It's a kind of culture that I think Mr. Rao is referred to. He's talking about the corporatization of Air India under the Tatas. And Mr. Suhail said, look, if the Tatas are so conscious about their image, why would they deploy, for example, pilots that aren't adequately trained to operate in low visibility conditions during fog? I mean, this was in 2023, December 2023, and they are fined in January 2024. Mr. Seth, can you hear me? Yeah.
It's a great point that you've raised. Now let's go step by step. Fog is an issue with two things. Number one, the airport equipment. And now you know that one runway from June 15 in Delhi is going to be shut because they're going to expand the runway from 610 to 900 meters. And they're going to install equipment which will allow for fog landings. Number two, why are you blaming only Air India or the Tatas? All airlines have suffered. There have been diversions where an Emirates flight trying to land
just a minute, Mr. Seth. I have to go straight across to Mr. Amit Shah. KVJ Rao, stay on with me. I'm just going to cut across.
आज दोपहर को एयर इंडिया की फ्लाइट संख्या AI 171 दुर्घटनाग्रस्त हुई और कई पैसेंजर इसके अंदर हताहत होने की संभावनाएं हैं। इस घटना से पूरा देश क्षुब्ध है और पूरा देश एक साथ पूर्ण संवेदनाओं के साथ ये जो दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण हादसे में पैसेंजर हताहत हुए हैं, इनके परिजनों के साथ खड़ा है। सबसे पहले मैं भारत सरकार, गुजरात सरकार, भारत सरकार के प्रधानमंत्री जी और गुजरात सरकार की ओर से भी जो लोग हताहत हुए हैं, इनके परिजनों के प्रति गहरी संवेदना व्यक्त करता हूं। 10 ही मिनटों में हादसे के भारत सरकार के पास सूचना पहुंची। तुरंत ही मैंने मुख्यमंत्री जी, यहां के गृह मंत्री, होम डिपार्टमेंट के कंट्रोल रूम, सिविल एविएशन डिपार्टमेंट, सिविल एविएशन मंत्री, सभी से संपर्क किया। प्रधानमंत्री जी का भी तुरंत ही फोन आ गया और भारत सरकार और गुजरात सरकार के सभी डिपार्टमेंट एक साथ होकर राहत और बचाव कार्य में लगे। इस विमान में कुल मिलाकर 230 यात्री देश के और विदेश के और 12 क्रू मेंबर सवार थे। इसमें से एक यात्री का बचने का अच्छा समाचार मिला है, मैं उनको मिलकर आया हूं। मृत्यु का आंकड़ा तो डीएनए परीक्षण और यात्रियों की पहचान के बाद ही अथॉरिटी अधिकृत रूप से घोषित करेगी, मगर जो यात्री बचा है उसको मैं मिलकर आया हूं। घटना के तुरंत बाद गुजरात सरकार ने बहुत त्वरा से डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट की सारी इकाइयों को अलर्ट करते हुए, चाहे हेल्थ डिपार्टमेंट जो हो, चाहे फायर ब्रिगेड हो, चाहे पुलिस विभाग हो, भारत सरकार की भी सीएपीएफ को संपर्क कर सभी ने एक साथ मिलकर राहत और बचाव का कार्य चालू किया। मगर 1.25 लाख लीटर ईंधन विमान के अंदर ही था और लगभग गर्मी तापमान इतना ऊंचा हो गया कि किसी को बचाने की मौका ही नहीं मिला। अब मैं घटना स्थान पर भी जाकर आया हूं। सारे यात्रियों के मृतदेह को बाहर निकालने का काम लगभग समाप्त हो चुका है। जितने यात्रियों के परिजन यहां पहुंच चुके हैं वो सबका डीएनए लेने की कार्यवाही भी 2-3 घंटों में समाप्त हो जाएगी। विदेश में जिनके परिजन हैं उनको सूचना देने की कार्यवाही समाप्त हो चुकी है और जैसे ही पहुंचते हैं उनके भी डीएनए सैंपल लिए जाएंगे और मृतदेहों की पहचान के लिए जितने मृतदेह मिले हैं इनके भी डीएनए सैंपल लेने की कार्यवाही समाप्त हो चुकी है। गुजरात में ही लगभग 1000 के आसपास डीएनए टेस्ट करने पड़ेंगे। ये सभी टेस्ट करने की क्षमता गुजरात में विकसित है, तो डीएनए टेस्टिंग के लिए कहीं गुजरात के बाहर जाने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी। गुजरात की एफएसएल और नेशनल फॉरेंसिक साइंस यूनिवर्सिटी दोनों मिलकर कम से कम समय में डीएनए का परीक्षण पूरा करने के बाद परिवारजनों को अपना मृतदेह परिजन का मृतदेह सौंपने का काम करेंगे। उनके रहने की सुविधा, उनकी सांत्वना की सुविधा, जिनको मेडिकल प्रॉब्लम ट्रॉमा के कारण हुए इनकी मेडिकल की सुविधा, ये सारी व्यवस्था बहुत सुचारू रूप से हो चुकी है। अभी रिव्यू मीटिंग में सारी व्यवस्थाओं को हम सब मंत्रियों ने साथ में मिलकर देखा है। एविएशन डिपार्टमेंट ने अपनी जांच शुरू कर दी है और जांच तेजी से आगे बढ़े इसके लिए भी एविएशन मंत्री जी ने सूचनाएं दी है। मैं फिर से एक बार राहत काम में जिन जिन एजेंसियों ने त्वरा के साथ बचाव और राहत का काम किया वो सभी का धन्यवाद करना चाहता हूं और फिर से एक बार जिन्होंने अपने परिजनों को गंवाया है, हताहत हुए हैं, वो सभी को मनपूर्वक संवेदनाएं व्यक्त करता हूं। मैं एक बार जरूर कहना चाहता हूं कि ये एक्सीडेंट है, एक्सीडेंट को कोई रोक नहीं सकता, परंतु 365 दिन 24 घंटा इस तरह की घटना के लिए प्रशासन का जो अलर्टनेस है उसकी कसौटी उसी वक्त होती है जब ऐसी घटनाएं होती है। और आज गुजरात के डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट की तैयारियों का एक प्रकार से दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण तरीके से मगर कसौटी हुआ और बहुत त्वरा के साथ यहाँ पर काम किया गया, वो पूरे देश के मीडिया के सामने और परिजनों के सामने भी आया है। अंत में मैं फिर से एक बार सम्माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी की ओर से, भारत सरकार और गुजरात सरकार की ओर से सभी हताहत लोगों के परिजनों के प्रति गहरी संवेदना व्यक्त करता हूं। धन्यवाद।
That Mr. Amit Shah there speaking about the tragedy and the relief and the rescue efforts that were mounted. Mr. Rao, where do we go from here? I also want to bring in Mr. Devesh Agarwal right after that, because we have a survivor, a miracle survivor, and I want to understand how that can actually happen. How can, after this fireball, someone walk away? But Mr. Rao, what's your quick assessment of the way ahead from here, Mr. Rao? Can you hear me? Yes. Where do we go from here, Mr. Rao? Do we have him? I don't think we have him. KVJ Rao, I think we've lost him there. But this is the picture, viewers. Air India miracle survivor walking away from that crash site. Mr. Agarwal, what do you make of this? How is this even possible? Even Amit Shah said that this was a miracle. I mean, a plane carrying 1.25 lakh liters of ATF goes up. Yep. And in, I think, 11A seat, we have a survivor.
God works in mysterious ways. I guess this gentleman's time had not come, and God has saved him. That's the only one word I can use for it. But since you're talking about this, Rahul, one point I'd like to this thing. I've seen some videos that are so graphic, and I would ask all your viewers also. We are talking about, those 75 students in the hostel, yes, and the passengers, of course, who have perished. But these are first responders and volunteers who have obviously seen carnage of humanity, which I'm sure they did not want to see, and I don't think they will ever forget. And I just would hope that the government would reach out and provide these first responders the kind of counseling they will definitely need post such a horrific thing.
Mr. Rao, very quickly coming out to you, where do we go from here? What do you think are the next steps? Who needs to principally answer, face the press, come out and give some basic answers?
Rahul, it's very simple. The DGCA needs to pull up its socks. They wanted to make the DGCA an autonomous body. It didn't happen. And we know why it was not allowed to happen. The fact remains is till we clean up the whole system, sir, it is going to be a problem. And it is getting murkier by the day. Like Mr. Seth was saying, why aren't we discussing other airlines? Let me tell you, sir, as on today, every aircraft is in violation of the minimum crew limitations. DGCA themselves have written a letter to me. But the fact remains is, where all can I go and what all can one man do? If the institution doesn't want to change, how can we get in? I can only
it's
take
the system, Mr. Damania, that is on test tonight. It is the system, Mr. Rao says.
It is, first of all, we have to admit one thing for sure. The aviation industry in India is growing very, very, very fast. It is growing, the fastest growing aviation industry in the world. We've already become third largest industry. And I am 100% sure the government is trying to buckle up and shape up and increase the capacity of the Director General of Aviation. But sometimes it's not possible. Our infrastructure is not keeping pace with the growth. Now, we may say it's good, bad, but this is the reality. The growth is fantastic. It is changing the entire country, it's supporting the country.
Okay.
And when an industry grows at this speed, there are going to be problems. I'm sure the government is going to do everything possible to bring this into better shape. But I think
not if we don't ask the right questions. Not if we don't ask the right questions. We need to ask the right questions. Okay, no, hang on. Let me go back to Mr. Seth. I had to cut him off there. Mr. Seth, look, it all comes down to accountability. The Tata is very conscious, you say, of their image. But then we have seen aberrations. Mr. Rao has also pointed them out. I have the details here. What do we do in a situation like this? We don't ask questions. What do we do?
They're going to install equipment which will allow for fog landings. Number two, why are you blaming only Air India or the Tatas? All airlines have suffered. There have been diversions where an Emirates flight trying to land has had to go back because the Cat 3 equipment is not working. The problem, Rahul, is no one understands, and you more than anyone else will understand when I say what I'm about to say. Pilots have to be type rated for Cat 3 landings. And that is why, if you see, pilots in countries where there is a lot of fog, whether you look at the Nordic countries, whether you look at some parts of America, they're Cat 3 trained. That Cat 3 training requires investment, which the Tatas have made. Which is why, if you go back to December 2024 and compare it to December 2023 and look at Delhi airport, you will see the number of diversions or the number of non landings owing to fog were far less because the Tatas had put into place certain measures.
I can only ask
Now,
the questions.
here's the thing.
You know, hang on.
that the
I'm running
DGCA
out of time. We can only ask those questions. We can only ask those questions, viewers, that are apparent to us. Yes, we agree. There has to be an investigation. Mr. Rao is also in favor of that. Mr. Agarwal is in favor of that. Mr. Sudhakaran is in favor of that. Mr. Damania is in favor of that. Mr. Seth is in favor of that. So we want the truths to emerge. But then on the back of that, we also want accountability. We've had 2 crashes in the past, but not much has changed really. Not many people we found were made accountable, apart from the small fry. That has to change. Till that doesn't change, viewers, there is not going to be a change in culture, and that's the real problem. We can talk about infrastructure, we can talk about this, that, the other, but if the culture improves, ways will be found. I leave it to this.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
I can assure you that Indian aviation is probably one of the safest in the world. We have all the protocols in place. Our DGCA is very robust and effective. And to find, to pick holes into our ability to manage Indian aviation would be very unfair. And I always say this, and I repeat, that aviation is either 100% or zero. There's nothing like 99.9% in aviation. And therefore, in this case also, look at the aircraft. It arrived from Ahmedabad from Delhi. Obviously, it flew without any issue. And to take a 9.5-hour journey from Ahmedabad to London, obviously the pilots would have done all the pre-flight checks. And no pilot is foolish enough to take off if he is not satisfied. The captain per se in this aircraft would have also had thousands and thousands of hours of command. And a 787 and today's aircraft per se are very robust, fail-safe. They have many backup systems. And to really think what went wrong, I would be hazarding a guess, which would not be fair. But the point here is the aircraft did go on a takeoff roll. And between the time the wheels went up and the time it crashed, probably the time frame would have been almost only about 60 seconds or so, because you can't go to 800 feet and crash and it be within the time span is only 60 seconds. Now he's already given a mayday call. Now I don't know what exactly went wrong. It will be again hazarding a guess, which would be unfair. The only thing which can be ascertained is now, since the aircraft has fallen just a few 100 meters from the airport and in the BJ Medical Complex, therefore, to retrieve the black box and the other equipment would be also, quite simple. We would be able to ascertain only after that. Let me tell you one more thing. In today's aircraft, they are very sophisticated. All the parameters of an aircraft, right? Every single second the aircraft is in the air, all the parameters are recorded, not only by the aircraft, but they are also transmitted to a central command, real time, of the airline itself. So if there is, when an aircraft does a flight, there is a way to ascertain every single parameter during whatever the duration of the flight. So if anything would have gone wrong prior to this flight, or which may have escaped the attention of anybody, I'm sure this will be retrieved in no time once the equipment is found.
Now, Mr. Patel, just to go back in time, because this fleet, the Dreamliner, very, very safe. I think from what the experts are saying, and I only have them to sort of lean on for facts, they've said that this is the first time a Dreamliner has actually crashed anywhere in the world. Now, most of these Dreamliners were purchased, I suppose, about 10, 12, 15 years back by Air India when it was still government owned. Obviously, there would have been a huge procedure that must have unfurled within government to select the plane. There would have been due diligence. There would have been all sorts of studies that would have been conducted.
Well, most certainly. I mean, first, the procedure itself in government is a very robust procedure. Goes through several layers. And ultimately, the basic selection of aircraft is done only on technical parameters. Because, the airline, requires a certain type of aircraft for certain, lengths of the flights. You want to go to the US, you want to go to the European countries, or to, 8-hour flights, 12-hour flights, and so on. And the kind of configuration you want. Let me also tell you that the Dreamliner, at the time it was ordered, was one of the most sophisticated, advanced fly-by-wire aircraft which was going to be produced. And it was ordered by probably most major airlines in the world, Air India also being one of the early ones. And to now even discuss it would be unfair, because after this particular aircraft itself, which has crashed, had been flying for almost 11 years. And if you see any major airline in the world, and if you go at any moment of time, there would be more than 1,000 787s up and flying.
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. We come to you tonight with news of another tragedy, a plane crash in Ahmedabad. An Air India passenger plane that took off for London and crashed within minutes. More than 200 people reported dead. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families of the victims. The pictures are shocking and heartbreaking. How did the plane crash right after takeoff? Was it engine failure? Was it human error? It's too early to say. Among the dead is a former Chief Minister of Gujarat. And so far, there is news of just one survivor. It's no less than a miracle. We will tell you how it unfolded, what the investigators are looking for, what does this crash mean for Air India, and why Boeing stocks have crashed. Leaders from across the world have sent condolences and messages of support to India. We'll also be tracking the riots in the United States, why the UK Prime Minister has refused to meet Bangladesh's Mohammed Yunus, how Canada has busted Khalistani narco-terror plot, why the US is pulling out its people from West Asia as a bigger war with Iran brewing there, and why Vietnam is merging cities and firing employees. First, the headlines. The dollar dives after US President Donald Trump's new trade threat. It lost 1% against the euro, falling to its lowest point in more than 3 years. Trump has said he will unveil unilateral tariffs within weeks. In April, he had imposed a blanket 10% tariff on most trading partners, but had put that decision on hold soon after. Colombia's president accuses the US of plotting a coup. He echoed remarks made by Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, who has accused the US Secretary of State of leading a coup attempt against Petro. Since 2022, President Petro has been in office. Colombia is currently facing its biggest security crisis in a decade. A US and Israeli-backed charity accuses Hamas of killing 8 of its aid workers. The group said a bus carrying its staff was attacked near Khan Yunis. Hamas claims the charity is used by Israeli forces to lure Gazans into death traps. Israel accuses Hamas of weaponizing suffering in Gaza. Indonesia's president will meet his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin next week. This will be President Prabowo Subianto's first visit to Russia since taking office. Jakarta has refused to take sides in the Ukraine war, and it looks to boost ties with Moscow. Indonesia is Southeast Asia's biggest economy. And South Africa races against time to find survivors of its deadly floods, which ravaged a coastal province earlier this week. More than 50 people have lost their lives. Torrential rains triggered heavy flooding and landslides. President Cyril Ramaphosa will visit the disaster-hit region tomorrow. It's a terrible day to do the news because there's only grief and heartbreak today. I'm sure you've seen the pictures already. An Air India plane crashed in Ahmedabad today. It took off in the afternoon, but within minutes, it plunged to the ground, right into a college hostel near the airport. The crash was captured on camera. Take a look.
पूरे ही गए होंगे।
You can imagine what those people went through. They were traveling to London today, maybe to meet family, maybe for vacation, maybe for a job or a college degree. Whatever the reason, you can imagine their emotions. You can also imagine the horror that followed. That's what makes aviation disasters so heartbreaking, the scale and the suddenness of it. The question is, how did this one happen? Let's retrace the plane's journey. This flight was operated by Air India. It used to be India's state-run flight carrier, but in 2022, Air India was bought by the Tata Group. The plane that crashed today was a Boeing 7878 Dreamliner. It is a wide-body passenger plane. It can carry up to 250 people. Now we come to the journey itself. This flight was heading to London's Gatwick Airport. It was carrying 242 people. That's 230 passengers, 10 crew members and 2 pilots, 242 in all. Some foreign nationals were among the passengers, 53 British citizens, 1 Canadian citizen and 7 Portuguese nationals. The remaining 169 passengers were Indian. That's what the flight manifest says. The plane took off from Ahmedabad at 1:38 p.m. local time. It climbed up to an altitude of 625 feet. But within minutes, the plane started dropping. And you saw what happened next. The aircraft crashed into a nearby building. It seems the pilots knew that something was wrong because immediately after takeoff, they reached out to Air Traffic Control or ATC and they raised a mayday call, which is basically a call of distress. And after that, the ATC got back to the aircraft, but there was no response from the other side. Perhaps there was a loss of signal or the plane had already crashed. Now, I know what all of you are thinking. How did the crash happen? Planes are considered the safest modes of transport. This plane, the 787, has never crashed before. So what went wrong this time? Let's go back to the crash visuals. You can see that the plane is struggling to gain altitude. The nose is pointing up, but the rear of the plane just kept plunging. Experts say this shows that the aircraft could not gain lift. Now, what does that mean? Lift is basically a force that pushes the plane up. It allows the aircraft to take off from the ground. It also holds the aircraft in the air. If the plane gathers enough lift, it can climb up and fly away. If not, this can happen, a crash. Of course, the next question is, why wasn't there enough lift? Hundreds of flights take off every day. Why did this one not gain lift? I'm sure an investigation will answer that. We do not wish to speculate here. Investigators will have to recover the black box. They will have to analyze the data. Only then will we know for sure. Having said that, experts have floated multiple theories like engine failure or bird hits, technical snags or wrong takeoff configurations. The fact is we cannot be sure, especially looking at the information that we have. Like I said, the 787 is a pretty reliable aircraft. It has never been in a crash before. Plus, this wasn't some old aircraft either. This particular 787 made its first flight in December 2013. It was delivered to Air India in January 2014, so the plane was just 10 years old. For perspective, an average aircraft is in service for up to 30 years. So this plane was not all that old, 10 years old. And what about the pilots? The plane was commanded by Captain Sumit Sabharwal. His co-pilot was First Officer Clive Kundar. The captain had 8,200 hours of flying experience and the co-pilot had 1,100 hours. So clearly experience was not a problem either. I know it's tempting to dig deeper into what happened, to fall into a rabbit hole, but we would advise against it. Air crash investigations are extremely complicated and sensitive. There are families involved. There are victims involved. So do not turn it into a game of speculation. With that said, let's look at the aftermath. The plane crashed into a residential area in Ahmedabad, specifically near a medical college hostel. Parts of the plane were strewn across the area. Take a look at this. There's debris all around the place and the fire seems to have charred nearby buildings. And casualties, well, the count is still being updated. Most of the injured were rushed to nearby hospitals. Reports say more than 200 deaths have been confirmed. Now, we are not sure if these fatalities are passengers or people living in the hostel. More than 200 confirmed so far. It could take time to ascertain that detail. Which brings us to the government response. Gujarat's chief minister visited survivors in the hospital. The Union Aviation Minister is also in Ahmedabad. A control room has been activated at the Aviation Ministry. A hotline has also been established. We are flashing the numbers on your screen. Do reach out if you need any kind of support. As for the rescue efforts, they are expected to take time. You can see the amount of debris and damage. It won't be easy to clear all of this out. Having said that, it's all hands on deck in Ahmedabad. You've got your rapid action forces, you've got the Central Industrial Security Force or CISF, you've got the Central Reserve Police Force or CRPF, and of course you've got the local authorities. All of them are pulling together to help the survivors. The political leadership is also monitoring the events. We have a quote from Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This is what he said: "The tragedy in Ahmedabad has stunned and saddened us. It is heartbreaking beyond words. In this sad hour, my thoughts are with everyone affected by it." Reactions are coming in from across the world. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer called the crash devastating. Russian President Vladimir Putin extended his sympathies to the families. Ukraine's President Zelensky expressed his condolences. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said that he was saddened by the crash. The Maldivian president pledged solidarity with India. The European Union president called the news heartbreaking. The Chinese ambassador promised solidarity with those affected. As always, grief tends to be a bridge. It brings the whole world together. But India won't be forgetting this tragedy soon. Incidents like these tend to leave a mark on our policy, on our psyche, and our worldview. It happened within minutes. The Air India plane crashed just over 1 minute after takeoff. There's shock, grief, disbelief, and a barrage of questions. How does something like this happen? How can a plane go down just moments after leaving the runway? As I've been saying, speculation does not help. There's a lot of conversation around this tragedy. Unfortunately, there's misinformation too. So we are trying to piece together the sequence of events. This is what we know so far. And these are the questions that the investigators need to answer. We'll start with the plane. A Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner. These planes were inducted in 2012 when Air India was still in government hands. It was the state carrier. The plane was going from Ahmedabad in Gujarat to the London Gatwick Airport. It took off at 1:38 p.m. local time, and barely a minute after takeoff, the aircraft went missing on the radar. It was at a height of 625 feet. At this point, 1 minute into takeoff, it disappeared from the radar. This is according to a flight tracking website called Flight Radar 24. Now for context, commercial airliners fly between 30,000 to 42,000 feet. 30 to 42,000 feet. This one was at 625 feet. So this plane was still quite low, and minutes after takeoff, it crashed. This was a plane being flown by two experienced pilots. The pilot in command had more than 8,000 hours of experience, and the second in command, the first captain, had 1,100 hours logged. Moments after takeoff, they issued a mayday call. The Indian aviation regulator has confirmed this. This is basically an SOS call. So the pilots figured that something was wrong right after takeoff. There are a lot of theories on whether the plane was fit to fly. We have no concrete information on that front, nothing confirmed that we can share with you at this point. But we can tell you this is how the probe could shape up. It will be led by the AAIB, the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau. It comes under the DGCA, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, which is India's aviation regulator. Their first task is to appoint an investigator who will gather information and data about the aircraft, when and where it was built, the plane's condition and operation records. Next, a team would collect evidence from the crash site. They will photograph the wreckage, map parts of the plane, and preserve any perishable evidence or things that could get lost, like aircraft fragments. But the most important piece of evidence would be this, the black box. And the name is misleading. The black box is actually orange in color, and that is by design. It is built this way so that it can be spotted easily in the wreckage. This black box effectively has two recorders. The first recorder gathers flight data. It is called the Flight Data Recorder, or FDR. It logs all kinds of details like the plane's altitude, speed, engine settings, and even cabin pressure. That is the job of the first recorder. The second one records sound. It is called the Cockpit Voice Recorder, or CVR. It captures every sound inside the cockpit, the conversations between pilots, radio calls, even the background engine noise. All of it is recorded. So the mayday call that the pilots made would have been captured by the CVR, the Cockpit Voice Recorder. Now, both these recorders are kept in hard casings. They are made to survive fire, explosions, even deep water and high-speed impact. So recovering the black box is key to any plane investigation. It may hold the answers to questions like what went wrong with the plane, was it technical failure, or was it human error? So investigators will look for the black box, and once all the evidence is gathered, it will be analyzed. That is the final stage of the investigation. Here, the team reviews all the collected information. They could bring in outside experts to analyze it, like senior pilots, plane engineers, aviation experts. Specialized labs could be engaged to assess the evidence, and once everything is in place, a final report will be written and released.
Very tragic and very, very horrific. And even till now, I have to say I'm in a state of shock. We are not going to spare anyone. We are not going to leave any stone unturned. we'll do properly according to the protocol, and we are going to go to the depth of why this incident has happened. That much I can tell you now.
India may also collaborate with international regulators. The US has already announced a team. They will be traveling to India soon to assist Indian investigators. It may take weeks, even months, for the full picture to emerge. Everything you hear before that is a theory. So wait for confirmation. I know it's a difficult and delicate time, and it's important to push for answers. We must know what went wrong to ensure that it's not repeated.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
I can assure you that Indian aviation is probably one of the safest in the world. We have all the protocols in place. Our DGCA is very robust and effective, and to find, to pick holes into our ability to manage Indian aviation would be very unfair. And I always say this, and I repeat, that aviation is either 100% or zero. There's nothing like 99.9% in aviation. And therefore, in this case also, look at the aircraft. It arrived from Ahmedabad from Delhi. Obviously, it flew without any issue. And to take a 9.5-hour journey from Ahmedabad to London, obviously the pilots would have done all the pre-flight checks. And no pilot is foolish enough to take off if he is not satisfied. The captain per se in this aircraft would have also had thousands and thousands of hours of command. And a 787 and today's aircraft per se are very robust, fail-safe. They have many backup systems. And to really think what went wrong, I would be hazarding a guess which would not be fair. But the point here is the aircraft did go on a takeoff roll, and between the time the wheels went up and the time it crashed, probably the time frame would have been almost only about 60 seconds or so, because you can't go to 800 feet and crash and it be within the time span is only 60 seconds. Now he's already given a mayday call. Now I don't know what exactly went wrong. It will be again hazarding a guess which would be unfair. The only thing which can be ascertained is now, since the aircraft has fallen just a few 100 meters from the airport and in the BJ Medical Complex, therefore to retrieve the black box and the other equipment would be also, quite simple. We would be able to ascertain only after that. Let me tell you one more thing. In today's aircraft, they are very sophisticated. All the parameters of an aircraft, right? Every single second the aircraft is in the air, all the parameters are recorded, not only by the aircraft, but they are also transmitted to a central command, real time, of the airline itself. So if there is, when an aircraft does a flight, there is a way to ascertain every single parameter during whatever the duration of the flight. So if anything would have gone wrong prior to this flight, or which may have escaped the attention of anybody, I'm sure this will be retrieved in no time once the equipment is found.
Throughout the day, families have gathered outside the civil hospital in Ahmedabad. This is where the crash victims were taken. All day, they have scrambled for updates. Relatives have desperately looked for their loved ones. But while this happened, on a bed in the same hospital lay a 40-year-old man. His name is Vishwas Kumar Ramesh. He is a survivor of today's deadly crash. And according to reports so far, the only